It's a beautiful Saturday, and I just want to welcome you to Rise and Thrive. Super, super excited to be back with you this week. Look, we are still in the month of flourishing, our month of flourishing. Look back and take account of how this month has been and how much God has helped you flourish. Today, I just want to remind us of something that's very important as you flourish as a child of God, whether it's in your business, your ministry, your relationships, wherever you have set yourself to flourish in this month. I want to remind you that after you have flourished, you need to be careful how you tread. Be careful how you walk. What do I mean by that? When you look at a palm tree, because we've been comparing ourselves to a palm tree this month, according to the scripture that we have stood on. When you look at a palm tree or any plant for that matter, when you plant it in the ground, it's not enough to feed it. Okay, so you can plant something, but if you expose it to elements that don't support its growth, it will begin to die. For example, if you plant vegetables, seedlings of vegetables, you can water them, fertilize them, but if you expose them to harsh sunshine, they might dry up and die. So that's what I'll be touching on today. How can you protect your fruit? After you've flourished, you've borne fruit. Some of you have started businesses this month. Some of you have started a new job. Some of you have embarked on a relationship. Maybe you've gone into courtship, preparing to get married. So how can you guard that fruit that has come in this month of flourishing? And so today I will be reading a chapter from my book. Okay, I've come with my book, Bounce Back Stronger, Wisdom Keys for Resilience in Times of Setback. So I am reading from chapter 7, and that's how we are going to end this month, because I feel it's important that we build boundaries around the fruit that God has freely given us. I mean, if you look back at your life and you look at those things that you have labored to actually create or to achieve or to birth, you will understand that these things are things that are of value. It's not things that you will easily give away or that you will treat with dishonor. It is things that you attach value to because you know what it took you to get them. And for someone, it might be you have shifted levels and that's how you flourished. You know what it took for you to get to where you are today. So I want to just do a teaching on boundaries today. Now, I have taught on boundaries before. In fact, I've done a series on boundaries. So if you want an in-depth teaching on boundaries, you can go back on my public page platform and just find the series on boundaries. I deal with boundaries quite in depth. But today I want to relate it to our flourishing. So how do we build boundaries around the fruit that we have received in this month of flourishing? So I've entitled today's teaching, Guard Your Fruit, Guard Your Fruit. So chapter 7 of Bounce Back Stronger talks about developing boundaries. So healthy boundaries help you build, protect, and maintain strong and rewarding relationships. Not only does it do that, but it helps you preserve the things that matter to you. Now, to be successful in building a new life, you need to set up new boundaries. Boundaries are limits you set up for the protection of your well-being. This means that you set up boundaries for you and not necessarily against others. You know, when we think about the concept of boundaries, usually we think, oh, I'm building a boundary because I don't want to let someone in. But if you look at boundaries in reality, they are actually protecting what is already inside. So you're not trying to keep people out, but you're trying to keep what is inside from actually flowing out or living your life. So when you think of building boundaries, always think of what am I protecting? You're not just building boundaries for the sake of saying, okay, I've got a boundary, that one's not allowed in, that one's not allowed in. But what are you protecting in essence? So when you have flourished, or when you have built something in your domain of influence, in your space, you need to protect it. And protection of our property always sends a message of value. Let me talk a little bit about insurance, for example. I have content insurance, okay? So I've insured my contents in our house. The reason I insure the content is because they carry a certain value. I would not insure something that I do not place value on. I'm sure you understand what I'm getting at. So if you value what you have in your life, you will insure it. And you will ensure it by putting up boundaries around it. That is protecting that which you value. If you value your peace, for example, you will put boundaries that protect that peace from living your life. So boundaries are, in essence, meant to protect you from losing what you already have. I will just skim through the chapter so that we can just pick up things that will be helpful to us in this conversation. So boundaries need to be introduced. Now, this is a very difficult stage when you are introducing new boundaries. It's harder to introduce new boundaries than it is to maintain old boundaries. The reason is human beings are creatures of habit. So if you already have people in your life and they're used to being a certain way around you, or maybe a more specific example would be if they're just used to cold calling you in the middle of the night, they can pick up the phone and just ring you, whether you're half asleep or you're just coming out of the shower, preparing for bed, they just call you and you pick up the phone. The day you will try to introduce a boundary that says, I will not pick up the phone after 9 p.m., and that person rings you at 9:30 and you don't answer their call, tomorrow they'll call you and tell you off. Why didn't you pick up my call? Because you're introducing a new boundary, it's unfamiliar to that person who's used to calling you at any hour of the day. So introducing boundaries can be a challenge, but still you need to introduce those boundaries because you are protecting the value that you have built around your life. So a boundary should be clear, okay? I say here, an example is a statement: if you speak to me in a disrespectful manner, then I will disengage from the conversation. So you need to be clear that my boundary is I'm not picking up the phone after 9. And here is what will happen if this boundary is broken. So I will not pick up the phone after 9 p.m. So if you call me after 9 p.m., I will not answer your call, and I will not owe you any explanation for not answering your call. Another thing you need to do with boundaries is not just set them up, it's to enforce them, okay? So boundaries will not do anything for you if they are not enforced. Communicate them boldly and confidently, but above all, be firm and reinforce them when they are crossed. Most people only realize the importance of boundaries when others invade their personal space and violate it. I have, alluded to that. So if you don't enforce your boundaries, people will cross them without even knowing there's supposed to be a boundary there. So you need to communicate them. And when they're broken, you need to remind people that, look, you're calling me after 9, and we did have a conversation around you not calling me after 9. Another example could be, you've built your business around the policy of, I'm not going to give credit anymore. I'm not going to give goods on credit anymore. And those people that you've been giving goods on credit will keep coming to you even after you have set the boundary to say, I will not do this anymore. Why? Because people are creatures of habit. So they will test the boundary, whether it's working or not. So they will come to you and ask for goods on credit. Now it's up to you to reinforce that boundary and say to them, look, this is a new policy and we are upholding it. And we are protecting the profitability of the company. And so we will not give goods on credit. So what am I saying? You need to be assertive about your boundaries if they're going to work for you. All right. So introduce boundaries around your fruit as you have flourished in this month. Protect your produce, protect your product, protect your whatever it is, business, relationship, protect it. Because people have a tendency to just want to cross boundaries. It's human nature to test boundaries. And I do talk about an example in my book that if you look at children, they test boundaries. If you tell them no the first time, they'll try again. No the second time, they'll try again. So you have to keep saying no until it registers in their mind that this is a no-go zone. It is the same with grown-up people, with adults who want to test boundaries. You have to keep repeating yourself and be assertive each time you are reinforcing your boundaries. So let's talk a little bit about emotional boundaries. How can you use emotional boundaries to actually guard the fruit that you have, harvested in this month of flourishing as far as relationships are concerned? So I'll read an excerpt from my book, and it says, boundaries are vital in any form of relationship, and breach of those boundaries can be hurtful to the person who has set them up. It is worth noting that the most painful setbacks are those that emanate from things going wrong in a love relationship between male and female. In a marriage, it is very common to feel things together. For example, when your spouse is sad, you feel sad too. However, when you begin to feel guilty, ashamed, upset, and undervalued as a result of your spouse's choices, words, or actions, it is time to set a boundary to protect yourself and ultimately your marriage. What do I mean by that? When we are in a relationship with people, especially, intimate relationships, we tend to feel things together. And it is important to know where to draw the line, because if we engulf ourselves in these negative emotions, especially like guilt or fear, it will drag both parties down that path of discouragement and depression. So you need to understand that as a party to a relationship, you have the responsibility to stop yourself and say, this is not my part. This is not my place. And you allow the other person to take responsibility for their feelings and to go down that road. You can be there for them, support them, but don't adopt the negative emotion and allow it to drag both of you down. I'll give an example of a marriage relationship. If your spouse is going through something that's quite depressing, you can empathize, you can feel their sadness. But the moment it starts drifting past that line of sadness into depression, you pull yourself back and you allow yourself to process the fact that now that your spouse is in a weak position, you need to take a different stance and build that boundary that says, I will not cross over into the depression stage, because one of us needs to stay sane to lift the other one up. So that's another way you can build a boundary emotionally. All right, so I will skip the other stuff. If you want to really go in depth, just buy the book or go to the videos, like I said, where I have talked about boundaries. But I want to touch on gossip, okay? Because when you flourish, people will talk either good or bad about you. And I have come into contact with people that struggle with building boundaries around what is said about them, around the negative things that are said about them. They feel crippled. They feel they can't move past the words of other people. So here's what I say in my book. I say, stop focusing on the gossip, okay? In a world where bad news travels faster than good news, you will notice that when there is news of something going wrong in your life or you failing in an area of your life, you will have an audience itching to hear what will happen to you next. Advancing technology has brought about the concept of living in a global village where privacy is highly compromised. This means that when you experience setbacks in your life, it is highly likely that significant parts of the global village population will become privy to some private details of your experience. Some will take a silent interest, and you will never know that they are following through with what is going on with you. And others will openly and expressly ridicule and gossip about you. Let me give you some sound wisdom and advice. Firstly, how you deal with your problem is more important than what the problem is. The problem may not change, but how you view and handle it is in your power to decide. Secondly, understand that time is a very limited commodity. So rather than use it to focus on the gossip and engage in damage control, use your time to focus on working your way back to wholeness and bouncing back even stronger. It is very important to understand that whether you fail or succeed, people will talk about you. They'll either talk good or talk ill. That you have no control over. Even in this month when you have flourished, you have received blessings, you have received favor from the Lord. Your business has taken off, your relationships are flourishing, your health has improved. People will begin to talk about you. Now you need to make peace with the fact that not everyone will like you. And ultimately, not everyone will like the fact that God has blessed you, the fact that things are working out for your good. So, beloved, it is outside your control what people say. And that's one boundary that you need to erect very quickly in your life, especially when you start, going from glory to glory and from blessing to blessing, and you begin to flourish in your life. You need to master this concept of separating yourself from what people say. I've trained myself in my life that whether it's praise or criticism, I will not allow it to get the better of me. It is very possible when God blesses you to become what we call big-headed. We always joke about this, that, don't become so proud of your achievements, so big-headed that you fail to feed through the narrow gate that leads to heaven, the narrow way that leads to heaven. But here's the point. When God blesses you, by all means, testify. Let people know what God has done in your life, because the Bible does say that they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, but also by the word of their testimony. How powerful has God been in your life? Testify. How good has God been in your life? Testify. How has God provided? How has God delivered you? How has God even saved you? Maybe he saved you from that fatal accident. He saved you from being swindled of your finances. He saved you from losing your house. He saved you from losing your relationship. What has God done in your life? By all means, testify. By all means, let us know what God has done. But when it begins to cross over into boasting and taking the glory for what God has done, then that becomes a problem. And that is something that can drag you down the lane of destruction, where, God does say through James that he opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So what I'm saying to you here today is that people will not always like what is happening in your life, and you need to be okay with that. So build a boundary around what you hear. It's not everything that you hear that you should believe. It is not everything that you hear that you should act on. In this month of flourishing, as we remain with a few days, whatever miracle God is going to do in these last few days of August, understand that he deserves the glory. And you can give him the glory by telling someone what God has done for you and giving them that faith and hope that God can do it for them as well. But do not succumb to any negative words that come through your ears. You will hear a lot of things. I always say you have no choice what people say to you. People just say things and you will hear them, but you have a filter through which you should take every word that you hear. Is it beneficial? Is it adding value to my life? Is it, helping me flourish? Is it encouraging me to become a better person? Is it encouraging me to love God more, to love people more, to serve people more? If it's not doing any of those positive things, discard it. Discard it. There's a lot of other things you can replace those negative words with. I have said in my book time and again that, you need to put yourself in an environment that encourages your strength and helps you deal with your weaknesses. And so I just came to encourage you here as we end the month of August, that congratulations for the flourishing that has happened in your life. And for those that feel like, they haven't gotten what they asked God for, be patient. God is still in the business of making you flourish. His favor doesn't end at the end of August. So this was a word that he released, into my spirit for the month of August, but he is still working it out in your life. The word of God is alive. So it will be alive even in August, September, October, November, December, through to eternity. His word is forever established. So keep standing on that word. Psalm 92 verse 12. The righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. If you feel you haven't yet flourished, God is still working on your case. Have faith. If he has done it for others, he can do it for you. So happy last few days of August. I will see you in September. Super excited about what God has in store for us as the Rise and Thrive family, and for everyone out there that joins me every week. I am looking forward to seeing how great God is going to be in your life in the month of September. Next week, I am back with a guest, and I tell you, you will be blessed. Be sure to tune in and to share the broadcast when it starts, but also invite someone to watch live, and let's interact there. And let's build one another that we may begin to rise and continue to thrive in this generation as we become a blessing to the people that God has called us to. So until next time, it's goodbye from me, and stay blessed and stay thriving in the Lord.